education and understanding is so important. Bud changed the way we looked at the world when he moved to Binkelman. He really didn't teach us how to move a herd. He just taught us to look at and be more observant. First time he went to the feed yard with me, I was walking through these pens of cattle and I was looking at every steer. And he said, don't do that, you'll make them sick. And he said, they hate that. He said, just pick your chin up and just look clear across and notice the smallest changes. He said, I want you to look at nothing but see everything. And then little tiny messages will come, you'll look across there and pretty soon you'll look back. And if something catches your eye 2 or 3 times, then you'll do something about it. Just changing the way you observe things is a really big, important part of this thing. What I want you to understand is what was new to me is that we used to expect newly weaned calves to cry for their mothers for 3 days or 4. If they cried for a week, we thought the sign of the moon was wrong. Well, that has a little bit to do with it. But the point is, they don't have to cry. We can teach cattle to be weaned. We can teach cattle to be silent on weaning day if, in fact, we believe that positive handler interaction can shape cattle behavior. Jerry, when I first moved to Binkelman, we had a lot of brucellosis bangs. And so the government would say, we got to bleed these cows for these people once a month until we get it cleaned up. So here we'd go all over that western Nebraska every month bleeding all these cows. We had some ranches, after the 3rd time we were there, they couldn't even get the cows in. They would have to sell them. At other ranches, you'd show up and the cows would be coming out of the hills and they'd walk through the alley in such a way that you could use the same worksheet. Number 34 was always ahead of 67, was 51. Just bloop, 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 bloop. Same genetics, same grass, different people. Different people. And so this isn't about cattle, it's about understanding the animals and the people around us. Really amazing. So we can make it a positive experience. I hope this video will play. Dr. Paulo is a partner of mine. He's working for Merck now, but when he came from Brazil, he worked with Nelore cattle. How many of you know what a Nelore cow looks like? She's a big white cow with those straight horns. And they can go fast. They're like a Brahma on steroids. They move. Well, anyway, they hired him to work in the AI programs there in São Paulo because they had herds of 100,000 to 150,000, and their first service conception rates for AI were in the teens, 15, 16%. And you can't afford to AI cattle if you're only getting 14% of them bred. And so they hired him to come there and help them with their semen handling. Well, when he drove into the first ranch and watched them handle these cows, it wasn't the semen handling that was bothering him. I mean, the first cow that went to the alley, there's 2 cows on their backs in the alley. The first cow they bred run out there and jumped the fence and was hanging by her hind leg. There was no reason to expect a conception in those kinds of cattle. So the point is, he understands that the way we do things affects conception, it affects growth, it affects health. And so he's been helping us put together some of these ideas. The biggest problem we have with early detection of disease is if animals do not trust us, they are not honest about how they feel. All of these animals understand that if we're a wolf or a predator, we are going to pick on or try to eat the weakest one, the one that lives, the one that's slow, the one that's sick, the one that's old. And so if these cattle perceive us as a threat, they will hide lameness, they will hide early illness, they will hide fatigue as long as we're in here.
On the other hand, if they trust us,
they will limp if they're sore. They will be depressed if they have pneumonia. It's really important that we what we're seeing is an honest picture of their true state of health.
That's why you're not using the word fear, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's confusion or distrust. Once you introduce yourself to a pen of newly weaned cattle or any new cattle that you've never met before, it's important to look over the top of the herd, not watching the animals that are right in front of you. Have a wide field of vision. And if you see an animal raise his head like this, you already know that you've been too much of a presence. So it would be really important to bring that animal's head back around and get him to trust you before you went any further.
If you think about one word to describe a horse, or a few words to describe a horse, what's a horse for you?
A very good friend. I've made a living all my life with him. Got a lot of respect for him.
This is really positive, what you call it, that they are volunteering to investigate. Everything's okay. Really nice set of cats.
No, and the first time we hear this, Marty said, we're going to see them next time. And now, with the third day red,
You can see how they can change so quickly. Our friend is still worried about us. She's still worried, so we're going to give her a little room. Yeah. She's a hard keeper. There we go. Let's work from the front. That way, angels. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, beautiful, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that's too many. The radio school, please. Loading feral cattle on a boat. He trained to go through little narrow bridges. The military backed this boat up, threw down an end gate. He's standing there like these, and these cattle would come by and jump in the boat. And I've always thought, if he can get cattle, feral cattle loaded in a boat, surely we can get a few cattle going. It's not a facility. The people are the key, not the skill. Merck has helped me organize some training modules, or some of this information is available on the internet, and that there's a www.creatingconnections.info address on there, and if you're interested in that, why we'll keep sending stuff out. But these it's taken me 20 years to learn what little I've learned. This is a great place to go and review some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight. The reason veterinarians are interested in this whole idea is that before we had stockmanship in our toolbox, we had a lot of problems in feed yards and ranches that antibiotics and vaccines weren't taken care of. It's amazing how variable that whole thing is. We've revaccinated millions of feedlot cattle, Jerry. We used to run these cattle off a truck right to the processing barn and spend money on vaccine, and had to revaccinate most of them at 14 to 21 days on feed. They weren't ready. They weren't ready to respond to a vaccine. Lots of these types of things we didn't understand. We had sick animals with pneumonia, and we'd give them an antibiotic, and they'd go ahead and go to heaven. Was it the antibiotic's fault, or were we treating the calf too late? So there's always things to ask. The most important part that I think that amazes me about Riverview Dairy and Wulf Cattle Company is that we've got to revitalize the tiny human resource left in agriculture. My gosh, how do so few of you do so much? Only 1.6% of America not only feeds the rest of America, but a big part of the world. So we've got to understand how to get more young people involved in this business. We've got to understand why people move around. That was the biggest problem I had when I first started doing feedlot work, Jerry. I'd go work with 4 pin riders for all day long, go back and come back, go around to the other feed yards, come back in a couple weeks, and 2 of those people had moved down to the feedlot down the road. And there were 2 new people there. Why were these people moving? It really aggravated me. What the problem was, it was me. It was my fault. The reason people were moving, they wanted to do a good job, and I'd tell them, you've got to find a calf the first day he's sick, not the 3rd day. But I didn't know how to teach people to do that. Or I'd get sick and tired of the processing barn, people screaming and hot-shotting all the cattle, and I'd just finally go get all the electric prods and put them in my pickup and drive off. That wasn't fair to those people. They had 1,200 cattle to process, and at that point, I didn't know how then to teach people to send cattle through a system in such a way they'd never dream of picking up a hot shot. Those are things that we have to take care of so people understand more about their job, and then when people really get good at something, the next thing to do is make sure they know that any skill you have, you can't keep unless you give it away. So any of you that are good at doing something, you're going to get worse at doing it unless you teach somebody else. Find somebody and make them better than you are. Make a teacher out of these people. It's really important. BQA and prudent antibiotic use is a big deal. We've got to understand how to give injections and how to use antibiotics. I don't think it happens up here, but there's a big part of America where they mass treat every calf that comes into a feedlot. We can't keep doing that. We can't keep doing that. If we're managing cattle so poorly that we've got to give every one of them a shot of antibiotics to keep them alive, we need to find better ways. And the things about your system of doing seed stock work, communicating, getting cattle vaccinating, getting cattle prepared, it's ridiculous what we do. How long, if you give a vaccine on the first day of March, how many days is it before the vaccine helps the animal? Is it days, weeks? Is it hours, days, or weeks, or months? Weeks. 2 or 3 weeks. Does a vaccine work better on sick cattle or well cattle? Well cattle, yeah. People that send their children to kindergarten, they don't send them to kindergarten in August and then vaccinate them at Thanksgiving, do they? No, give them a shot before they go. It's just common sense. The reason Dr. Kipp and my veterinary group work so hard is that we have to get cattle to eat quickly when they arrive at a feed yard, and then lameness cases are terrible in the feedlot business. We have a few foot rots, but most of the lameness cases we have happen really early in the feeding period. After they've been through a sale barn, after they've been sorted, after they've been trucked, that's when we have cripples, and cripples cost us a lot of money. The other thing is safety. The biggest reason to think about these things, there's a person almost once a year dies in Kansas or Nebraska working cattle at a sale barn, at a ranch, at a dairy. For heaven's sakes, people. Bud's #1 rule was to never put yourself in a position to fail. And we actually have people that put themselves in a situation where they die working with cattle. Please, please, how do you stop that? How do you take care of that? You have to say something. If you see some pin rider chasing a steer 35 miles an hour down a feed alley to get around him, to get him back in, say something. Hobble his horse. We can't have a Kentucky Derby down a feed alley in a feed yard. They'll say, oh, he'll get away. Yeah, he will if you chase him. If you just sit there, he'll come back. Really, really, safety is a big, big deal. So I think it's really important The other thing is time management. We have people that tell us we don't have time to acclimate newly arrived feed yard cattle. We don't have time to work with these new calves, but we have time to pull the sick ones. We have time to post the dead ones. We have time to sort the go-homes. We have time to treat the retreats. Let's take some more time in prevention and acclimation and have less time, take less time treating cattle. The thing that has changed in our cow-calf world is Bud taught us that you can actually change the maternal bond. We used to have cows that would take, they'd have their calf way over in the corner of the pasture, and they'd hide him over there, and they'd come to the feed ground twice or all day and eat, and they'd go back twice a day and feed their baby. That's not normal. We'd have calves, we'd lose 3 to 4% of our calves to enterotoxemia because the calves only nurse twice a day in the stormy weather. You can teach mothers and babies to be together. You can teach mothers and babies to have a meal every 20 times a day instead of twice a day. And it really changes the health. This imitating weaning on branding day. How do these people get cattle to gain weight on weaning day? They train the calves to be weaned the day they brand them. And that, I'll talk to you just a second about that. That's a big deal. And where I live, we've got a little work to do there because we still have really quiet people maybe spend all winter calving out these 500 mama cows, and they're quiet, they move them very well, and for heaven's sakes, then on some Saturday, here comes 15 aluminum trailers over the hills, and we're going to brand. And boy, things pick up. If that's, and out in Nevada and Oregon, they're still ear notching cattle. They're still cutting wattles on these cattle. If every time a baby is touched by a human, he loses a body part, he sees a pattern there. I think we have to think about how we train these cattle and what we train them to do. What Bud taught us was that all the harmony and support starts at the top, and we have goals. We try to create a scenario where we manage stress so the immune system can work. When we started doing BQA and we moved the injections from the muscle to sub-Q, why did we do that? Why did we stop injecting in the muscle? Yeah, so residues and tissue damage. We decided it wasn't a good thing to inject our food. And I thought, well, the vaccines won't work very well because we used to give them in the muscle, now we're giving them sub-Q. What kind of cells have to respond to a vaccine? What kind of cells in the body have to respond to an infection? Bone cells, muscle cells, blood cells, brain cells. Blood cells. Which color? White blood cells. Great. Where are most of the white blood cells that aren't in the blood vessels? Most of them are in the skin. The next is sub-Q. And what is new to you, to me, is that you as a handler can turn the immune system off, you can turn it on, you can speed it up, or you can absolutely make it not work. How many of you have ever touched a Gallagher fence charger? Do you remember it? Now, you'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. Yeah. So if every time a calf goes towards the processing chute, he gets a dose of that, he never forgets it. He never forgets it. And his system is just, he's not worried about IBR. He's worried about that person with that yellow machine.